that video actually to put in perspective for Army leaders essentially what science and technology has brought to the Army over time. And often it's under-realized how much technology has played in what the Army is actually fielding today. And I kind of gave you a timeline, just more than that we drink a lot of coffee and leave coffee rings on timelines, but that we actually have been an enabler to a lot of the technologies you see today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the Army's doing and hopefully put it in perspective for you and give you some opportunities for how you can play a role in the Army. And I specifically will say at the end of the video you saw some of our concepts that we're looking at now and some of the concepts that we're talking about for the future. Those future concepts come out through what we have been doing lately called technical wargaming. And that's an opportunity that I will invite you guys to participate in to help the Army think differently for the future. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But I'm going to start here. The Chief of Staff of the Army, General Milley, has made a couple of things very clear. The whole focus of this AUSA is readiness of the Army. As the Chief has said, readiness is his #1 priority. There is no other #1. But the other thing that he has said is that we need to listen and learn as an Army. Listen to ourselves within the Army, our sister services, interagency partners, the private sector, all of you, and also from our critics. And we need to adapt what we learn to make the Army better. And that's what we've been trying to do. In the science and technology world, we are focused on the future needs, future capabilities of the Army, because technology takes time to develop, and that's our mission. But we're also part of what is enabling the current needs and the current force of the Army. Why? Because I have 12,000 scientists and engineers that are very good at knowing the Army environment, of the kind of challenge that we have, and who they can tap to come and do a quick fix solution, even if it's coming from industry, stuff that's already on the shelf, stuff that's under development right now. They know how to make sure that it can work for the Army needs. That's part of what we do here. And this is where we're located. Sorry, my finger isn't touching things very well, but this is where we're located all across the U.S. It's probably hard for you to read, but we have 5 commands that execute science and technology for the Army. The Army Material Command being the largest. It executes 74% of our investment, that $2.4 billion a year. The Army Medical Command, that does obviously our medical research, our combat casualty care, the ability for soldiers to go into unpleasant environments and actually perform their duties, all coming out of the Army Medical Command. The Army Corps of Engineers, the Engineered Research Development Center, that does a lot of our environmental work to make sure we can do our training ranges. They execute the High Performance Computing Modernization Program for all of DoD, and they do a lot of our work on base protection and the understanding of how to set up sustainable bases. We have the Space and Missile Defense Command. They execute our high energy laser work and are looking at aspects of space technology as it relates to the tactical commander in the field. So when we talk from the Army perspective about nanosatellites, they're our lead for understanding exactly what nanosatellites can do for the tactical commander. And then the Army G1 has a very small component that does behavioral and social science work for us, and they look at leader development and selection of people coming into the Army to make sure they get into the right MOS and get in the right jobs to make them successful. If I had to kind of summarize what the Army is looking for in the technology world, it really comes into these enduring challenges that the Army is going to face. And they are really the challenges of any land combat capability. We're always going to want better force protection, be it on the soldier, individual soldier, be it on the platform, be it for our bases. We're looking for lighter, we're looking for more durable, we're looking to be able to defeat any threat. We're always looking for better protection. We are trying to unburden our soldier, both weight from a dismounted perspective and cognitively. We're giving them lots of technologies, and they've got another mission to pursue. We don't need to complicate their life with technology that isn't seamless and intuitive. We are always going to want better mission command and tactical intelligence when we need it, where we need it. And we want to reduce our logistics burden. The Army is the logistics supplier, not only of a very large Army, but of our sister services as well. We're always looking for how we do that better and more efficiently. Operational overmatch, well, that's lethality. I'd say we do that very well, but we won't stay ahead of our enemies unless we make sure we invest in that to give us greater capability. And maneuverability. So the Army has kind of a bad record there, right? We're seen as kind of large, hard to get to the fight, but once we're there, we have staying power. So we're looking at how we can make ourselves more expeditionary. How do we make it sure that we can get to the fight in a faster timeline? How do we make sure we can get out of the fight faster as well? And that's what we work on in the areas of mobility. So early detection and improved outcomes for traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder are really folded under force protection. That's a whole medical side of force protection. But we call those out explicitly because they are so important to our warfighters that have been in Iraq and Afghanistan. And they show a deliberate effort on the Army's part to make sure that we return our soldiers in their quality of life. Also with operational energy, another area that we have highlighted because while it supports our logistics requirements and our need for better logistics, it really is something that we've taken a deliberate effort on trying to improve. And then there's individual and team training. The Army is very large. We do not fight independently. We fight as teams. And our challenge is to find better ways to pull these teams together, to do things that we can accelerate that team unity and make them perform well together through the area of technology. And then the last bullet, well, I guess you would say that might be the most important of all, because in the Army right now, if you do not have an affordable system, you're likely not to be a system that the Army can pursue. So we're looking at affordability at all levels. And from a science and technology perspective, that used to not really be our problem. Our problem is to show something can be done. But these days, we don't have the resources to do everything. So we're taking on affordability as part of our design in the first place to make sure that as we are doing the design of capability, we are trying to make it as affordable as we possibly can. When you look at the Army modernization strategy, we're in this dilemma. We have to balance between force structure, between operational readiness, and between modernization when you look at the Army's overall budget. Force structure we know is coming down. We've been directed to reduce the number of soldiers in the Army. However, we can't bring it down fast enough to align with the dollars that they've already reduced from the Army's pocketbook. And so we're not going to give on operational readiness. That's just not the right thing to do. So the bill pair essentially becomes modernization accounts. And when we look at that and you look at how you would execute that, the Army has made some tough decisions. The first thing they have done is they've said that very top pinnacle of the pyramid, science and technology, they are protecting that investment. They have not taken money from the science and technology budget. They have protected it because they know that that's important for the future capability of the Army. The next level down, however, all of those new systems, that's where we've taken risk. There have been a number of new systems that we had thought we would get started that have been delayed because we don't have the resources to get them underway. And we've been very selective on what we have started in this time of austerity. When we look at modification and modernization, well, if we don't have new systems coming on board to replace capabilities, then we need to make sure that the older systems that we already have are upgraded to the best of our ability. And so we make very deliberate decisions on what we are going to upgrade through engineering change proposals, through improvements to capability out there to make those platforms last longer. And then reset and sustain. A lot of our equipment has gotten more usage than ever planned for in Afghanistan, and we're bringing a lot of it back. And we know that the Army is always on call to go out again if need be. So we need to make sure that our equipment that has come back is reset and ready to go out to a war fight if called. And that's part of our investment strategy. And the thing at the bottom, the divestment, well, that's one of those, I like to say that's a human nature thing, right? So all of us tend to collect things and put them in the, things that work, but we got a new version of it. Well, we keep the old one in the closet or in the basement or something because it's the just in case. If I break this, I've got a backup that I know works. Well, the Army is no different. And so in that divestment category, we're looking at a lot of equipment that we've been keeping because it really worked. We've got a new, better version, but if we needed, we know we could go back and get it. All of that costs money because we have to warehouse it, we have to store it. Sometimes we have to have security to make sure that it's still there. So the Army has made a deliberate decision with the Vice Chief of Staff, General Allen, and the former Army Acquisition Executive to go through all of those things that are currently not being used by the Army and decide what do we really need to keep and what can we afford to give away. So now I'm going to break for a second and start talking about some areas of interest that you will probably have heard about, and they should be of interest to you because they are opportunities for where you might be able to find business or leverage your investments. Then the first one is the third offset, and the concept areas that are being spoken of by the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Secretary of Work, who has talked very frequently about the third offset and the need to get ahead of our adversaries. And in that area of expertise, what they're talking about are getting long-range weapons, very precise weapons, weapons that can do both air-to-air combat and surface strike at ranges that we haven't had before. So they want to make sure we can go in very long, very precise capability, and I'll add in affordable capability. We're looking at low-cost ways to defend ourselves. We need to change that cost paradigm that we currently have. I'll give you an example. We go after enemy unmanned air systems, and we would use very pricey missiles to go and defeat those UASs. Well, that is really to the enemy's advantage, right? The UASs aren't necessarily that expensive, but our missiles are, and we have a limited stock. So we're looking at how we can do that differently. One approach might be directed energy weapons, for example, using lasers to take out UAS. So we're thinking that way. How do we change the cost paradigm of what the enemy is bringing at us? Autonomy and artificial intelligence we see as a big change of the future, and the specific 5 bullets underneath this particular area were crafted by Secretary of Work himself. He thinks that, and we think that there is a big change coming in the use of autonomy to do a teaming of capability with our soldiers to make sure that we are able to leverage that capability and get the best for our soldiers overall. That includes manned-unmanned teaming and the smarts to be able to do that. That includes autonomy that can work on its own, that will have learned over time how to work in conjunction with humans. That's research that is still underway and needs to be done. And I would tell you quite candidly, that needs to be done with operators so they get a sense of trust for what we're providing. Cyber and EW, you absolutely know the issues with cyber, and you can pair cyber with electronic warfare and get some pretty interesting effects that we are very much looking for. And in the last particular paragraph, or the bullet, it's talking about wargaming and experimentation, another opportunity that all of you will have to be part of that. I talked about the video and how the future concepts were coming out of these technology war games that we had started. This is an opportunity where we are looking for folks that aren't traditional Army thinkers, that are kind of out of the box, look at things in a new way, and aren't constrained by how the Army prosecutes missions today, that can help us think about how the future might be. These war games are done on the web. You'll see there is a HTTP site there in the yellow box, so if you're interested, you can find out more about them. But one of the things that we do here is we set up a scenario of the future. We bring in folks that have looked at climate change projections, that have looked at the economic projections for the time frame of 2040, and they introduce a scenario that sets you up in your mind and ready to go with what the world of 2040 would be like. At that point, then they start the game. They give you a mission. Now you're in that mindset. This is what's going on in the world. Here's your mission, and what can you bring in technology-wise? And so it's not just great ideas that you might have, but we take those great ideas and then we take them out to our subject matter experts in the Army, and we verify that the laws of physics will allow you to do that. And then we try to estimate how long would it take us to get that capability, and that all now plays into actual war games with soldiers run out of our training and doctrine command. The other thing that we've been doing is red teaming our technology early in its life cycle. Why? Because we don't want to field capability that's outdated before it gets there. We need to look at technology as the enemy looks at it, not as we look at ourselves, but if the enemy does things that are not necessarily in our scope of way of thinking, we need to think more like that. And if you know what the enemy can do and where your vulnerabilities are, and you fix them as you are in the development phase, one, you get a better fix, and 2, it's a lot less expensive. And so we're doing that now to make sure that when we field stuff, it's ready to go for the soldier. And we do that in a couple of ways. You'll see another yellow banner here, and this is something that is the technical support and operational analysis vignette. We do, every quarter, we do an exercise, and it's focused on the squad and small unit. And we bring in small industry and academia, labs, they bring in their hardware. We do actual mission events that are scripted by operational soldiers. We have our soft forces there. We've even had Border Patrol come in to try out technologies in a non-attribution, learn, test, try, and get really, really, really candid feedback on that capability and how it works for the soldiers. We not only look at technical performance, but we look at the training comes with that equipment, the logistics to sustain that equipment, because if you are successful there, then you should be able to go into the field relatively rapidly, and that was part of our intent here. We've done a number of looks here. We did a counter UAS event last September in Camp Roberts in California that was very successful. Gave us a lot of insight as to what the enemy can do with UAS and our capability to see and counter that capability. But not just at an early system level, also at the fundamental technology level, because as we're coming up with new technologies, they also have inherent vulnerabilities. Better to know early before we get well underway into a program, because again, affordability is going to matter. Our investments are important. When you ask what does the Army need, this is a pretty generic motherhood apple pie kind of list of capabilities, but affordable is key, redundant so that we know that if something goes down, we have another backup plan. Open systems architecture, something that industry is, depending on where you sit on industry, it's a great idea or not so great idea, but open systems because that's the way that we can counteract the changing threat. We do not have the money or the capacity to do new platforms or new major systems every time the threat changes. We need to be able to take plug and play, so to speak. If a new threat comes out, we can take out our counter munition if it's an active protection system, or we can put on a new sensor if we need to. We need to be able to adapt with the threat, because certainly they are adapting faster than our acquisition process. Understanding the vulnerabilities, I just talked about that. Low cost capable, and simplicity versus complexity, because we are taxing our soldiers who have a primary mission, and it's not to figure out, oh yeah, I need to do the technology in this way. They just need it to work, right? We need to make it as simple as possible. This gives a little bit more specific examples of the kinds of technologies that we are looking for in the very specific portfolios that we organize technology. So in our ground maneuver, we are looking for holistic protection. We can no longer afford to just do passive armor because the weight is too much. So we can do passive armor that will defeat the threat, but you get a very nice non-mobile pillbox, and that really doesn't meet the Army's needs. So we're looking at how we can do that differently. Part of that is active protection. Active protection we've been working on and successfully demonstrating for years. The key here, though, is it tends to be threat specific and platform specific, and therefore unaffordable. It's not easy to upgrade. So we've changed our paradigm. We're calling for modular active protection, where we then have a base common architecture that can go from platform to platform and also be upgraded based on the threats that we're facing. We're looking at the counter munition capability for that to grow to defeat a variety of threats incoming. The soldier squad, always looking for that lighter weight protection, more flexible protection that we're seeing. Human performance is a big one, though. Understanding how the soldier is performing, understanding how to augment his performance, and by that I really mean from give them better visuals, give them better auditory, give them better exoskeleton lift capability. We're not talking genetic manipulation. I know the words get this kind of mixed up, but we're not talking that. We're really talking how can technology aid the soldier, and looking at that. And in our looking at aircraft survivability, affordable aircraft survivability, we have a great program underway right now, and it is a suite of sensor systems, control law theory for rotorcraft, and cueing of the pilot of rotorcraft, and it's called degraded visual environment mitigation, right? The goal is to allow our rotorcraft pilots to fly in any environment, sand, sun, low light, high light, snow, rain, All of this together. So that is a suite that we are working now, and you have this multiple parts of informing the pilot. But we also want to extend that to aircraft survivability too, because that also is a sensor suite. So we want to be able to use that same architecture and expand it to provide aircraft survivability. When you go into the command control communications and intelligence, we're looking for spectrum agility, to have assured communications, and sometimes, yes, even undetectable communications. We originally thought we want to be able to know everybody that's coming out on the node because it's all us. We want to know where we all are. But frankly, when we know where every one of us is, then the enemy can probably find that out too. And so sometimes we don't want people to be able to find that out. That creates another challenge for us. We will see a lot about hardware and software convergence to take all the different boxes that are on platforms, or all the different things that are on a dismounted soldier, and start to convert them either into cards that go into one box on a platform, or apps that go onto a phone, for example, for a soldier. Those are things that we're working now and seeking help in getting there. And lethality, well-directed energy is a big bet. And we believe that there's a lot of viability in it, because it does change that cost paradigm for us. We're always going to need better guidance and cheaper and more effective seekers, so we're looking for capability there. And then we're looking for technologies that make us, it says net zero, and I do mean that, because we have bases that we want to be self-sustaining, and right now it's not. And if you just track what happened in Afghanistan, we were spending a large amount of our convoy time getting logistics out to our remote bases. And wouldn't it be better for the soldiers and for those that had to convoy the equipment out there if we could make those bases self-sustaining? So there are technologies that can help us with that, and we're very interested in seeing that happen. And then autonomous systems that work with the soldier as a true partner, not as something you have to think about, oh yeah, I need to send it here, but as something that just works with you. So I know it's pretty quick, and there are a lot of words up there, and hopefully you'll get a chance to go back and look at it. But the other thing I would say is you can go to this website, the Defense Innovation Marketplace, which actually tells you not even more than what the Army is looking for, but it's really a DoD website that talks about what technologies are out there that we're trying to seek across all of DoD. It talks about our timeline, so you get an idea of where we think that technology can insert into programs. Talks about capability gaps, so it gives you good opportunities for where you might be able to engage the entire Department of Defense. And then the Small Business Innovation Research website as well. I know we're going out for activities there, so there will be open RFIs and BAAs that you can possibly respond to. So with that, I would say thank you for taking the time to listen to me. That's a little bit of insight into what the Army is doing.
So if we have a few minutes, are there a few minutes still available for maybe a couple of questions? Okay, let's go ahead straight to the audience. We're using, since we're streaming, we're trying to make sure we get everything up on the microphones.
Hi, Ms. Miller. Michael Hoffman with Tandem National Security Innovations. I was wondering how the Army's efforts so far have gone with trying to attract innovators and some of the startups out there that are interested in working with national security agencies, kind of part of Defense Secretary Ashkar's program. And I understand the Army started the Open Campus Initiative as part of this. I was wondering how that was going so far.
With regard to the Open Campus Initiative, I personally think it's a great success that we have now 2 open campuses. One is on the Adelphi campus of the Army Research Lab, one is on the Aberdeen, Maryland campus of the Army Research Lab, and they're actually going to open one in April out at the University of Southern California. 12,000 square feet, again with the same philosophy that industry, academia, our international allies, and our government researchers are all co-located, sharing ideas, and it's not, hey, you have to stay in that room and only on that computer. It's really an interactive, inter-agency kind of effort, and it's been working out very well. Looking at how, one of the things that we're trying to look at, and Dr. Russell, the director of ARL, is kind of leading the charge on how we can get government people and industry people in and out of respective organizations. So government people go and work at industry for a couple of years, or go on sabbatical and work at the university, and don't lose privileges as a government worker, and they just get to come back when they're done. And industry the same way, coming in, spending some time in the government lab. We offer some very unique tools, which gives them great access. And we clearly have very challenging problems, and it gives them the opportunity to sometimes go more than they might have been able to influence in their own industry aspects. So.
Have you gotten some of those companies to really start working within those labs? Have you gotten the response that you expected?
Yes, we've been getting very good response. We have a number of companies, well, so I think on the order we've got, so I don't know the number, but I think it's over 150 CRADAs, the Cooperation Research and Development Agreements with industry, to include some of the standards that are used to working with DoD and a lot of new agencies that aren't so used to working with DoD. And that's really what we're trying to get, kind of like that technology war game discussion. We're trying to get folks that aren't traditional Army, because if you're traditional Army, then you think about things the same way. And we're looking at a future where things are going to be changing, and we can't just say it's going to be the same, only with better tools, right? We need to change what the tool set is. We need to think differently. And sometimes that needs outside influence to help us think differently.
So I'm going to interject a quick question on, if I can. You raised the issue of affordability. One of the values of the community that we're trying to reach out to, the innovators, generally don't show up here not having already thought about something. They're bringing some sort of a technology or capability or a service that they've worked on for some time on their own nickel. So right off the bat, there's some value and affordability in that you didn't have to pay to get them to where they are to begin presenting. The other side of the problem we find with a number of these people is we brought in a good crowd that often has little knowledge of how to work with the government, perhaps never have. So in order to facilitate leveraging that affordability and the talent out there, can you give us some insight on mechanisms? I'm a small company. I want to try and get a real look. I would like the Army to give me a real look at what I'm doing or what I'm capable of. And if it's kind of off base, I mean, you need it green, I'm painting it blue, that type of thing. How can I get that type of a good interactive relationship started?
Well, there are a couple ways. The first thing that I would say is all the services have small business innovative research capability, right? And if you are a small company, I would say go on the website, because we do put out broad agency announcements. We have technical areas that we're interested in, that's across the Department of Defense. And the one thing that they do with the CBR, it's what we call we're all acronyms in the Army, well, in DoD. But when we talk about CBR activities, the one thing that we do as you prove out your concept, and the first phase is they give you money to prove out the concept, and it's pretty much always paper, but then they give you money to actually go and try to build it. But they also have this, and I'm going to get the name wrong, but they have an advocate for you, the small business, to do that transition to actual acquisition, actual programs of record. Because oddly enough, the rumor is that the Department of Defense is a little bit challenging. We got a lot of policies, we got a lot of forms that fill out, a lot of ways to do business. And these are people that help you wade through that and try to streamline it for you. The other way I've seen a lot of small business deal with the Department of Defense is through consortiums. And we've got a number of consortiums that have been set up for specific technology areas. You join the consortium, and the consortium then does the interface with the DoD bureaucracy, and you get to do your work and deal with the consortium itself. And sometimes it's found to be easier. There is the DIUX, which Dr. Carter stood up out in the Silicon Valley area, and that really is a group out there dedicated to trying to do that matchmaking of sorts between innovative companies that may or may not have experience with DoD and folks within the Department of Defense to see where there is some synergy. Every single one of our research, development, and engineering centers and our corporate laboratory, the Army Research Lab, as well as our program executive offices, they do industry days. And I would say that's another avenue to get your chance to talk with people in the government about what you're doing and where you think it might fit, and to get some insights into what the Army is looking for. So I think those are all avenues you can pursue.
Hello, my name's Catherine Roos. I'm at MRDEC for years and years, and I was interested in, the White House put together a site called www.challenges.gov, which was putting out challenges to the general public to help all the different departments of the government. I just wish we had that same platform for internal and for defense contractors. That's a real interesting site. I don't know if you've ever been to it. Of course, it puts out challenges, and some have some kind of prize for it, some of them don't. But the platform is just so interesting, and what I see as a problem is just having communication. I mean, I know at high levels people have the communication and know what the needs are, but you on the working level, a lot of times there's not enough communication or getting to share creative ideas, etc. And I think something like that would be really valuable. Just saying.
Appreciate that. Of course, the challenge authority that has been exercised probably most notably by DARPA in the robotics challenges. You'll see that but there have been challenge authorities exercised at lower levels that aren't as well documented in the YouTube. If you saw the latest robotics challenge with the humanoid robotics, it was pretty great on YouTube. But those things are happening. I would say though that that's a great site, and I would agree that Department of Defense that would be an interesting thing to look at.
Other questions? And please, I want to be considerate of your time. So
You got next speaker, right?
it's 10 after.
I don't want to blow your time either.
Oh, you won't hurt us.
Good afternoon. Dave DeYoung, Boeing. Ms. Miller, you recently announced the insertion of lasers into IFPC being 22-23 timeframe, and wondering is there in your estimation are there opportunities sooner for transition of high power lasers to the warfighter, and if so, what part of the Army mission do you see that going in, and roughly when do you think that's going to happen?
So the clear path is an integration of directed energy into the indirect fire protection capability IFPC program, and that transition is currently set for the 22-23 timeframe with notionally 100 kilowatt laser, and that is I won't say that's an easy program, because directed energy is something that the Army has to figure out how to use more effectively, what it's going to mean to the warfight. But that one's easy because you have that command and control structure already there that is required for the missiles that we launch off of that platform, which is an FMTV, family of medium tactical vehicles. The challenge comes when you start to give high energy lasers of that kind of caliber onto smaller units. Then the Army has to think through, what does that mean to the concept of operations and the control of that particular asset? And they are working that now. So if technology becomes available and the Army can work through how we would conceptually use them, there might be an opportunity for insertion of high energy lasers into the operational forces sooner than that. But I would tell you it would be at a lower power level, or intensity level, as you know, and it would be for a limited set of threats. IFPC is pretty broad. It's going from RAM, counter UAS to cruise missile, with a possibility to grow even further than that.
So, Ms. Miller, thank you very much. We